Okay, so let's quickly knock out a foot to go along with this. So I'm just going to give him like high top sneakers or something. So over here, I'm just going to drag out a box, drag this up, and let's add let's see, just a segment there on the length so that we can extrude up. Right click, convert to editable poly, select this face here, Shift E, drag this up a little bit like that. So very generic, as I mentioned before. We're just kind of learning the process. Now you'll notice here there's this mirror button. So if I click on this and I say, okay, I want to mirror across the x-axis, and I hit OK, you'll see that it mirrored the object itself, right? So what we can do is by holding, actually we don't even necessarily need to mirror it. I can just hold shift because it's pretty symmetrical on both sides. So I'm just going to line up the width so it's the same width as the leg here. So scale that in a little bit like that. Hold shift and just drag it over here and make a copy. There we go. So there's our foot. Now within this we need to create some controllers. Let me hit P to go to perspective mode. The way I do that, another thing I want to do is start to build out some layers. So I'm going to create one layer here called Geo, and that way I can just hide the geometry. And so I'll plus that, go to Geo, and just go through and select all of this good stuff. And let's see, let's go down to that Geo layer, right click, and then do, well, I guess I could just drag them. So here's this foot, this box 2, drag it into Geo. Let's make this invisible. Grab this, drag that in here, and then I can just turn that visibility on and off. Alright, looks like we're missing, there we go. Okay, let's talk about creating some controllers for this. Also, I want to make the spine a different color, so let's go ahead and make this red, which is pretty much the industry standard. Anytime you see a lot of these spines, or the default guys that come out of Max, you know, you'll see these kind of, I hit Z to zoom in so I could just kind of recenter my point here. Alright, so let's create some controllers. So with that, I'll make a new layer and I'll just call this controllers CTRL. And this root really should not be in the controller layer. I'm going to throw it back into default because we should make a root layer. So with that controller area selected, I'm going to move this off to the side, thin this out a little bit. Let's go to here, let's create a circle like this, and I'm going to turn rendering on, but only for the enable in viewport, so you can see that, hit Z to zoom in on this, it gives it a little bit of width, so it's up to you how you want to adjust this. I'm going to right click on this, convert to editable spline, and let's go ahead and press 1 to select vertex mode, and you'll see you have all these different verts. So what I'm going to do is hold shift and duplicate this a couple times, maybe twice, and use those later. So with this selected, press 1, bring that in, just going to flatten that out, and this is going to serve as my controller for the front toes. So just kind of lining this up here. This is going to be my master controller for the entirety of the foot. So I'm just going to press R and then scale that out a little bit like this. Bring that in just a little bit. Now what I want to do though is, actually this node isn't going to be used, but let's straighten that out. Is I want to get these all aligned properly. So with my align tool, let's select this, grab my align tool, click on that joint, and I want it to be centered, and let's do X, Y, and maybe, yeah, not Z. Then I'm going to hit OK. Now you can see it's centered to the foot. I want this to be centered to this joint. So let's click this and bring that forward. Now this might need to be scaled out a little bit up front. And looks pretty good. I think that's good enough. Alright, Control X, if you hit it by accident, it brings you in and out of expert mode. Oops, we don't want to dock that. Alright, let's bring this off. I have a laptop with a bit of a smaller screen, so navigating can be tough. Okay, looks pretty good. Now, I haven't been doing a really good job of naming any of this stuff. So this is our, I normally do like so this is the left underscore foot underscore CTRL. That's this thing. This is what I want to name here. So let's make sure we're on that. Let's close this out for a second. Yeah, so we want this to be our left master foot controller. This is going to be our left, double click that inside guy here, toe controller. And then we want the, let's select this guy, bring him in. This will be our heel. I'm going to duplicate one more time out here. This would be our left heel controller. So let's bring this down a little bit. Let's do the same aligning trick. And I'm just going to bring it back here. I just kind of want it in the same area roughly. Left. Heel controller. And then this guy, generally what I do is I rotate it and it helps control the node overall. So notice if I right click on this, I can actually spin this value or just type a 90 here. And then I'm going to hit R and scale that down and just align that, the position of this guy with that node. And I do want to go Z, so I'm going to do all of that. So it looks pretty good. So let's rename this one toe pivot, because what this guy does is you pivot the toe. We're going to pivot the whole foot on this toe, so like it'll all arc up. Alright, now what I want to do is notice that my pivot point is down here. I want it to be up here by the ankle bone. So when I move this giant foot controller around, it'll actually move that foot. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take I want to move the pivot point. So if you see here where I hit Effect Pivot Only, notice I can actually move this pivot point around, and when I uncheck this, my pivot point ends up out here. You see that? So one way to do it is turn this back on, and then notice I can use my Align tool here, and if I click on this, then I click on that, I can align the positioning of this to the pivot point, right? So now when I hit OK, you can see my pivot point is now aligned with the ankle. Now these two guys, I'm going to do Effect Pivot Only. Same sort of thing, but I'm going to align it to this bone. I'm going to hit Apply, select this guy, and then let's hit OK. And I want to do the same thing for this one, where I'm going to align it to this toe bone here, and then I'm going to hit OK. Oops, looks like it didn't work. Let's try that again. And then pivot X, Y, and Z, and let's hit OK. Let's make sure that this one did. Yeah, it looks like they both work. So now they're both going to be moving, or their pivots are based on here, because as we move the heel, we're going to be rotating the heel off this, and then the toe, we're going to be rotating it at this position here. Alright, so let's select all of these, So I'm holding control to select multiple objects. Let's make sure this is off. And I'm going to mirror it across the x-axis. So I'm going to hit OK. Sorry, let's do it one more time. I'm going to mirror that. I want to make sure it's a copy. It's across the x-axis. And I'm going to offset it just a little bit over here. Okay. I'm going to do the same sort of snapping, but with effect pivot off, right? So like with this one, I'm going to align it here. Then just hit OK. Align this guy here. Hit OK. Here. And then this one should be aligned essentially to that node. And we want the pivot center. That just reminded me I need to do it on this guy too. Now these, I'm going to make them, oops, sorry. Select these guys here. And I'm going to make it an offset shoot of that blue, so maybe something like this. And then I'm going to make this one an offshoot of this green. So I think this was the green we used, so maybe a lighter green like that. It's looking pretty good. Alright, so now let's give these controllers a purpose. So what I'm going to do at the top here is I'm going to go back to animation here, and I'm going to go to, let's see, here we go, relationships IK. Let's do IK limb solver. It used to be in its own section, so let's do one here, and let's do another one here. So animation, relationships, we're going to do IK limb solver. So select this guy here. Let's rotate this around. Now what this allows us to do is as we move the leg around like this, it sort of pins that position in place, and we want to attach that essentially to these. Now notice that we forgot to, or we didn't hook up these legs to the root, and that's pretty simple. We're just going to use a align and link for that. I'm going to actually, let's see, looks like my viewport, a lot of my stuff got kind of screwed up here. Let's hit P to go to perspective mode here. Let's go up here, and I'm actually going to reset my workspace to default. I think this is part of my thing. I'm going to pause the video, and then I'm going to select default from here. Alright, here I am back in default, and what that allowed me to have is sort of everything is kind of back to where it was. This modeling tab here, I'm going to undock that and just kind of close this out. I don't need this right now. So I do want this link. So this select and link here will allow me to select each one of these hips and link them in here. Now they are getting screwed up because of the IK handles are attached. So I'm going to go back a little bit before I applied those IK handles. And then I'm going to try to relink this here like that. And now that shouldn't rotate the legs. And now I'm going to go to animation, IK solvers. There we go. Now I have my default menus back. So you can see I have my limb solver here, and then I can go back up here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I just needed to redo the default layout, which is like essentially my favorite layout. So here we go, animation, IK solvers, limb solver. Now when I select this and I move the hips down, you can see the feet get pinned in place. Alright, so let's go ahead and start connecting this even more. Now notice as we move the hips around, the feet go through the floor. That's not what we want. We want to pin it so those toes stay in place. So what I'm going to do is the same thing as before. I'm going to go to animation, IK solver, and I'm going to add a high solver now, which is more for when you're going from joint to pin things. So I'm going to do one there, select this, animation, IK solver, high solver. I'm going to pin that here, and that's for single joint. Now watch what happens when I move these hips down. you can see those feet, they stay in place, and that's going to help us a lot too when we go to move this foot around or do any sort of attachment to this right here. Now let's do one more, which is animation IK solver, high solver, and go to the tip of the toe. Oops, let's select the bone. Animation IK solver, high solver, tip of the toe, boom, select this joint, animation IK solver, high solver, and that'll allow us to do toe taps. There we go, like that. So it's getting there, looking pretty good. I might straighten this out just a little bit. Let's actually bring our geo back. Just so I can, yeah, there we go. It looks pretty good. Okay. And I'm going to actually undock this here and maybe dock it down here. Alright, so let's go ahead and hide our geo and let's start linking this up. So what I'm going to do is, with this selected, this IK handle, I'm going to link that to this heel controller. And what that's going to allow us to do is, as I move this sphere here, the controller, you see it picks up the foot. Same thing with this one. Let's do the same thing here. Another cool thing is, notice if I hit E to rotate, I can actually rotate that heel up from there because we positioned our pivot point there, which is pretty dope. Alright. Alright, so let's do the same thing here. I'm going to select this controller here, and I'm going to link that to this guy. Do the same thing here, just like that, link it to this guy. Now you'll see if we rotate this, oops, this is more for movement, because remember we want to be able to pivot. And we've got to link this guy up too. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and link this controller here to that guy. It's kind of hard to see, sorry. So let's link this guy to this. And now if I rotate this, this should, yeah, there you go. It's rotating up. There's our toe row. See that? And what I want to do though is I want to rotate this guy. And when that rotates, both of these pivot off that toe. And that's probably easy. You probably guessed that. We're just going to link this circle to this. Let's select this circle to here. Now I'm going to select this, hit E. Now you can see I rotate the whole thing up. Let's do the same thing here. Let's link this to our circle here. Let's link this guy to this circle here. Now when I rotate this, you can see that whole foot gets rotated up. Now one of the things is, notice this one didn't break, but this one did. And the reason for that is somewhere along the line, I actually broke the linking between this joint and this one. So if that happens to you, you can just select this foot and then re-link it to this. And then when you go to rotate it, it should fix it. And we've got to go all the way up the hierarchy. So let's link this joint. Oh, actually, the way it was created was, it should be linked all the way up this way because we want it to move from the hip. So I'm going to select that, move that up. So now let's see what happens if I rotate this. Good, and then I rotate this. Yeah, I run back to normal. Alright, let's Control Z that. So those feet are looking pretty good. Let's double check this. I'm going to hit Z to zoom in. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Alright, so the last thing we need to do is, notice if I select this guy up here, I can move the whole foot around, right? Actually, this thing, let's see what's being left behind here. See, this one does it right. I think I kind of, let's see if we could fix this. So yeah, what happened was this joint here, the linking got broken. So I think we were selecting this, and we essentially linked it here. Let's make sure that works again. Yeah, and now when I move this, so linking really is just kind of like parenting or connecting things. There we go. So what I can do now is, remember we created this master controller and it's up here. This is what we really want to use. So if I select this, instead of having it up here moving the whole foot, we want to use that master foot controller. So I'm just going to link this to my master here. I'm going to grab this guy and link this. I also want to change that color. Looks like I forgot to change that too. Let's hit OK. Now when I select these guys and I move them around, the foot should go with it. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, so that is a fairly advanced foot controller. I'm going to hit Z to zoom in here. And you have to forgive me if I'm clicking around a lot. It's just the I going from Maya to Blender to Max whenever I make these tutorials or I'm teaching. Alright, in the next video we'll move up the body and take a look at the arms and the chest and all that stuff.